I am absolutely fascinated with early American history, specifically those decades after the American Revolution. And we saw our nation and our government establishing itself, and folks just spreading westward into the modern-day states of Ohio, Kentucky, Indiana, and Illinois. And perhaps there's no better way to trace that early American history than along America's roads. And today I am in Cambridge City, Indiana, standing along the historic National Road to do just that. The National Road was the first federally funded highway in the United States when it was authorized in 1806 by President Thomas Jefferson. Construction began in Cumberland, Maryland, and in sections over the next 2 decades, they built this road over 600 miles, ending in Vidalia, Illinois, when the federal contract ran out. Along that route, multiple towns began to pop up to support the thousands of American citizens that were streaming westward. And one of those towns was where I'm at right now, Cambridge City. Cambridge City was founded in 1836 and very quickly saw a boon in population and in just business success as people continued to head westward through the town. Of course, when the interstate highway system was established in the 1950s, the National Road saw a steep decline in traffic and use, and towns such as Cambridge City suffered for it. Now, although the National Road was no longer used as a main thoroughfare, it was incorporated into the new system, and today, at least along the eastern portions, most of it coincides with US 40. Much like Route 66, the historic National Road is sort of a time capsule of American history. And to me, it offers a much more fascinating glimpse into America's past, with countless historic sites and stories all along this trail. And I will be checking out some of those historic sites today, largely highlighting the story of Iron Brigade Commander General Solomon Meredith. Now take yourself back to 1830s America. Things were quite different then than they are now, of course. And one of the big differences was the mode of transportation. Of course, folks still got around by horseback or by wagon and stagecoach. But in the 1830s, and really much earlier than that, because George Washington was also involved in this, was movement by canal. So canals essentially utilized existing rivers and waterways, such as the Ohio River or the Whitewater River in this case, and dug out canals and utilized horses on either side of the canal to pull a boat up the canal. And this was to move both people in terms of transportation, but it was also heavily utilized in commerce to move products, produce, and livestock. And here in Cambridge City, and it sort of follows along the National Road all the way down towards Cincinnati, is the Whitewater Canal. And the Whitewater Canal was active from 1836 until 1863. And I'm just outside the historic Venton House, which gives some of that history on these signs. But it says that the canal was 40 feet wide and only 4 feet deep, and it ran for 76 miles and had 56 locks. And as mentioned, I'm standing outside the historic Venton House, which is located right here along the National Road, and it was built at the junction of the National Road and the Whitewater Canal. And it was here to serve as a place for lodging and refreshment for all of those people that were moving westward to change their lives and to just move elsewhere into the interior of the country, or just those businessmen that were going down the Whitewater Canal, moving their product further inland to service those people. But it is a beautiful relic of that canal era, that bygone era, and I'm very thankful that it still stands today. And as mentioned earlier, Cambridge City is known for its antiques, so of course the Venton House today is an antique store. Go figure. As much as I've enjoyed exploring the history of Cambridge City and of Indiana and the Midwest in the 1830s and 1840s, The real reason I'm here visiting Cambridge City is because of this man right here. This is Union Army General Solomon Meredith, who has deep ties here to Cambridge City, which is why he has this large mural painted here on the side of the building, and that's located right here on the National Road across from the historic Vinton House. But Solomon Meredith, originally born in North Carolina in 1810, as the story goes, actually walked from North Carolina up to Indiana, where he started getting involved in farming and other work. And he became friends with Oliver P. Morton, who was the Indiana governor during the American Civil War. So when the war broke out, he started raising a regiment of boys from Wayne County, which is where we're at here in Indiana, and Oliver Morton made him a colonel in the 19th Indiana Regiment. He went on, and though there were some stories that basically said a lot of folks didn't like him, or other officers didn't like him because they felt he was sort of a political appointment or a political officer, which I guess you could make that argument. At any rate, he rose in the ranks and eventually became the commander of the Iron Brigade, which was comprised of the 19th Indiana, his home regiment, the 24th Michigan, the 7th Wisconsin, the 6th Wisconsin, and the 2nd Wisconsin. So we're going to go ahead and head down the road and check out a few more sites here in Cambridge City associated with Solomon Meredith. Located right here along the side of the National Road is another historical marker titled Iron Brigade Commander. Of course, this is dedicated to General Solomon Meredith, and it reads, 1/4 mile south of this marker is the home of General Solomon A. Meredith, Iron Brigade Commander at Gettysburg. Born in North Carolina, Meredith was an Indiana political leader and post-war Surveyor General of the Montana Territory. So I did do a little bit of research on General Meredith and was really curious about what battles and campaigns that he had participated in. So he first fought at the Battle of Bronner's Farm in the Northern Virginia campaign, and he was wounded there. And because he was suffering from wounds from Bronner's Farm, he actually did not participate in Antietam, which led to a little bit of controversy. But he did go on to participate in multiple other battles, to include the Battle of Fredericksburg, which was the first time that he led the Iron Brigade in combat. They went on to participate in the Chancellorsville campaign, and of course, they most famously fought in July of 1863, when they suffered significant casualties during the first day's fighting at Gettysburg and Herbst's Woods on Seminary Ridge. And this is really where General Meredith gained a lot of his fame as the commander of the Iron Brigade. During the Battle of Gettysburg, General Meredith was wounded. He was actually struck in the head by shrapnel, which fractured his skull and gave him a severe concussion. His horse was also killed and blown out right from under him, so he was essentially disabled and unable to lead the Iron Brigade any further. General Meredith ended up performing administrative duties essentially for the rest of the war out west. But he did return to Indiana after the war, back to his farm here in Cambridge City. For a few years after the war, he did serve, as this sign says, as the post-war Surveyor General of the Montana Territory. And he actually became a prize-winning cattleman here in Indiana for a lot of the longhorn cattle that he raised here on the farm. So we're going to go ahead and go 1/4 mile south of this marker, as it says, to find the home of General Solomon A. Meredith. So I'm on my way down to see the General Solomon Meredith house, but this house actually caught my eye. One, because it's absolutely beautiful, and it actually reminded me a little bit of New England and the East Coast architecture, which makes a lot of sense. This is known as the Overbeck House, and it was built in the 1830s. So we talked about how Cambridge City was established and platted in 1836. So this would have been one of the original buildings and homes here in Cambridge City. And today it's a pottery studio, but it is absolutely beautiful, nestled here in the trees, and you may be able to hear it, but between the birds and the cicadas and anything else that could possibly be making noise, it is going on around me. So it is a full-blown summer day here in Indiana. All right, here it is. This beautiful brick home here before us is the General Solomon A. Meredith house. And if you're wondering why I'm standing so far away from it, it is actually a private residence today, which I'm very jealous of. So I don't want to invade the privacy of the homeowners. But one thing I always think is cool is you can look on Redfin to get some cool details about some of these historic homes. So this house, which General Meredith lived in when he was here in Cambridge City, was built in 1836, and it is 6,500 square feet, if you're interested. It sits on 12.5 acres of land today. It has 7 operating fireplaces, a front and rear stairway, and opulent woodwork throughout. It also includes 8 spacious bedrooms, 3 full and 2 half baths, which probably was not the case back then, of course, and is an absolutely beautiful property. And if you're also curious like me, it was sold in 2017 for just over $200,000, which again, I am extremely jealous of, but it is a beautiful home. And again, today is a private residence, so if you do decide to swing by to see the old general's home, just be respectful of that. But I will say it is very peaceful back here. And you can see the woods over there, cornfields, and it's just very, very peaceful. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and finish up my time exploring sites associated with General Meredith by heading to nearby Riverside Cemetery to visit his grave and to pay our respects. We're now in nearby Riverside Cemetery, and here we are looking at the final resting place of General Solomon A. Meredith. And by a long shot, this is the largest monument here at the cemetery, which I might add, the cemetery is completely surrounded by cornfields, which is a very Indiana thing. But this monument is towering above anything else here. And there at the top, of course, we see General Meredith in uniform with the sword at his side. And it looks like there are inscriptions around all sides of this. And in part, this side reads, "A gallant soldier and just man, Major General Solomon Meredith, born in Guilford County, North Carolina, May 29th, 1810, died at Oakland Farm near Cambridge City, Indiana, October 21st, 1875. A man of good heart, pure patriotism, and generous hospitality, distinguished for his energy of character and the promotion of public improvements, liberal education, and progressive agriculture." One thing we haven't really touched on is that Solomon Meredith, outside of his role as the commander of the Iron Brigade, did serve a number of roles here in state government. And it sounds like he most enjoyed his time as a farmer, because after the war, when he finally returned to his farm here, which he called Oakland Farm, he really got into cattle raising and agriculture and just living sort of that quiet farm life here out in the fields of Indiana, eastern Indiana. Here on this side is an inscription dedicated to Solomon's wife, Anna Hannah Meredith. And Solomon and Anna had 4 children together, a daughter who did not survive until adulthood, but they did have 3 sons who were all involved in the Civil War. Their oldest son was Samuel H. Meredith. He served under his father, actually, and died at home here in Cambridge City in 1864 of wounds that he received at the 1862 Battle of Gainesville. Their second son was Captain David M. Meredith of the 15th United States Infantry, and he won a brevet promotion to major and died in Alabama in 1867. And their third son was Henry Clay Meredith, who actually survived the war and inherited the family farm here in Cambridge City. And on this third side is an inscription dedicated to Henry Clay Meredith. And of course, he was most likely named after the well-known 1800s statesman Henry Clay. A few other notes about Solomon Meredith that I thought were interesting. He was an extremely tall man. He was 6 foot 7 inches tall and was nicknamed Long Sol. which is appropriate. Also, his grandfather, James Meredith, actually fought in the Battle of Guilford Courthouse during the American Revolutionary War. And as mentioned, Solomon is originally from Guilford County, North Carolina, so he had pretty deep roots in the founding of the United States and in fighting for this country. So perhaps no surprise that Solomon and all three of his sons would go on to serve the Union Army in some capacity. And we've been talking about their sons here on the fourth side of the monument. It reads, "He died for his country, First Lieutenant Samuel H. Meredith, son of Solomon and Anna Meredith." And as mentioned, Samuel died here on their farm in 1864, so it makes sense that he's buried here with his parents. And the other son, as we just discussed, Henry Clay Meredith, is also buried here. It's just that third son who died in Alabama, I presume, is also buried in Alabama, based on what I'm reading here at the monument. It really is quite a beautiful monument and a very peaceful cemetery. Just listening to the mourning doves up in the trees. Unfortunately, dealing a little bit with the bugs buzzing in my ears, but otherwise a really nice place to be laid to rest. And I did want to come around here to see the actual markers marking the grave sites of Solomon Meredith and his family. So here on the far end we see SM for Solomon Meredith. Next to him is his wife, Anna Hannah Meredith. And then a few of his sons, Samuel Meredith, and a few of their spouses as well. That was fascinating, getting to learn a little bit more about the history of Cambridge City and what the United States would have been like in the lead up to the American Civil War. Really did expand my knowledge on this country's history. I will say, being outside this much, I'm starting to pay for it in terms of the bugs, the heat, and the humidity. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap this one up. But neat learning about another leader of the American Civil War, especially one that has ties to Indiana. Myself, as a native Hoosier, really enjoyed learning a little bit more about that. So hopefully you all learned some stuff along the way with me. But that's going to be it for this journey. Now it's on to the next one. Okay. Yeah.